It's a stair-step process. I want it to be as comfortable and satisfying as possible. Now, once you've become keto, once you've built the metabolic machinery, as long as you don't go back to 200, 300, 500 calories or grams of carbs a day, whether or not you're in ketosis, you still have that metabolic flexibility. So I use the word keto now because that's where I exist. I exist in the keto zone. Some days I get 30 grams of carbs, and that's all I get. Some days I get 150 grams of carbs. That's what I get. The difference is I don't notice any difference from one day to the next because I've built that metabolic flexibility to extract energy from whatever substrate is available.
And do you have a way of getting people to, like a short analogy or a description of what it's like to not be controlled by hunger? Because the people that I've encountered anyway, it's like they get it intellectually, but they're not moved emotionally to make the change.
Yeah, that's a tough one because so much of our lives revolve around hunger. I mean, I'll give you an example. Most people, you and I included, sort of live right on the edge of what can I get away with? How much bad can I inject and get away with it, right? And with food, it's basically, what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight? This is how people think. What's the most amount of that dessert I can have and not feel miserable or guilty? And so we live our lives that way. And over time, we find that some of us even develop an exercise habit around that. Like, okay, I go to the gym and I see people on the treadmill all the time. I'm always interested in like, why? They're like, you're there 5 days a week and you're doing 45 minutes. Why are you doing that? Are you training for a 10K or a marathon? And the answer is typically, no, I like to eat. I'm like, dude, you would rather be miserable for 45 minutes so that you could earn the right to eat something you probably shouldn't be eating in the first place? How ridiculous is that? So rather than go through life with this strategy of like, what's the most amount I can eat and not gain weight or not be sick to my stomach or not feel overfull, I did a thought experiment years ago and I said, what's the least amount of food I can eat and I have all the energy I want, maintain muscle mass, never get sick, most importantly, not be hungry. Hunger throws everything out the window. So if you can get to that point, Tim Ferriss would say the minimum effective dose of food, right? But it's basically like how can I orchestrate my eating strategy so that I'm always satisfied, but I know where the limit is. And if my limits are 3 bites of cheesecake or 4 pieces of a chocolate cake or 1 bite of cookie, or in my case, I have a gluten insensitivity, but I can have 3 pieces of bread slathered in butter, and that's kind of my limit. And so I know I'm not giving up bread. I just know where the limitations are, and I'm happy to incorporate those. So I'm actually playing right up to the edge of what I can get away with, but I know where that edge is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Look, I don't judge choices. People shouldn't judge choices. You need to understand your body, where your limits are, and I love this idea. So LGN, right? So your community knows well, look good naked. And you said there's actually been a recent shift to FGN, feel good naked. And you said, I think that's really important. Why is that an important shift? Well,
looking good naked, for some people was like a primary motivator. Most people on Instagram, apparently. But in the real world, and in my world, most people initially came to the Primal Blueprint, my site, Mark's Daily Apple, because I was talking about alternative ways to achieve health. Looking good naked was a nice side effect, but damn it, I want to feel good. I want the joint pain to go away. I want to get off my meds. I want to lose 100 pounds and get to a decent weight, not lose 4 pounds and get to a cover of Shape magazine weight. So feeling good naked is really about just, okay, I have energy, I sleep well, I'm in a good mood, I'm getting along with my family, I'm productive at work, I'm enjoying as much of every moment as possible. That's really what, in my mind, that's why we're here, to get the greatest amount of real-time pleasure in the moment as possible. my lifestyle that began with emphasis on complex carbohydrates. So there are a lot of, quote, healthy whole grains in my diet. So I always ate a lot of grains. I always ate a lot of 7-grain breads and whole wheat, pancakes and buckwheat this and whole grain that, to the point where I was in some weeks, some days consuming 700, 800 grams of carbs a day, sometimes 1,000 grams of carbs a day. And that was always assumed to be like the healthy way to go about things. Like I got early on, sugar's not going to serve me as well as an energy substrate as whole grains that are sort of low glycemic, et cetera, et cetera. But what I didn't recognize early on was the potential damage that the anti-nutrients in certain grains would do. So as I got deeper into the research, I still, up until the age of 47, was defending my right to eat grains. Even though I was reading about, I'd read some of Jared Diamond's work, I'd read other people who were indicating that the gluten in wheat, that the folded proteins, the gliadins, the zymes in corn, and all these different forms of protein were so tightly wound together that humans hadn't developed an efficient way of digesting them, because grains have only been on the scene for literally about 10,000 years. But I kept defending my right to eat grains, and throughout my life, it was like I had to drive an hour and 15 minutes to get here this morning. Happy to do it, Tom. But I would have had to think about what gas stations were open along the way with a bathroom in case something went wrong. I mean, I literally lived in fear of like having to go to the airport for an early flight and having a 40-minute drive and no bathrooms along the way. It was, I woke up with a severe cramps every day of my life from the age of 14 to 47, pretty much. Sometimes when I was under stress, it became so debilitating that I remember having to go sit in our hot tub at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, just to kind of ease the pain. My wife one day she says, I just gave up grains and I feel so much better, you should try that. And I'm like, wow, I hadn't thought of that, even though I've been writing about the possibility. So I gave up grains for 30 days. The arthritis in my fingers went away. Some of the tendinitises that I had subsided. The upper respiratory tract infections went away, and most importantly, the IBS went away. It just literally went away. It almost brings me to tears today to think about how much I suffered simply by assuming that, well, since the rest of the medical world and conventional wisdom, and certainly all the vegans, think that grains are healthy for me, that couldn't be problematic. Having given grains up, that was really what drove me then to write the Primal Blueprint, to take a position on how important nutrition is for everybody, that whatever is ailing you right now may or may not have been caused by some nutritional choices you made, but certainly could be mitigated, if not cured, by alternate choices. I'm pretty clear on that. I don't purport to know what everyone is for everyone's condition, but I would say that my job as an educator is to offer up these opportunities. Like, here's what the research shows on reducing grain consumption. Here's what the research might show on skipping a meal a day or fasting intermittently. Or here's what the research. We talk about sleep and sun exposure and everything that has to do with diet, exercise, health, fitness.